Here is one continuous piece of recorded music: warm chords, a loose drum pocket, a voice at the edge of the phrase, and the sound of the room around all of it. Now listen to the idea differently. The phrase is split into small pieces. One chord lands early. A vocal breath becomes percussion. The tail of the last note is reversed into a transition. New drums and bass turn the source into a completely different performance. That transformation is the heart of how to sample music creatively. Sampling is not just dragging a loop under a drum beat, it is listening to recorded sound as raw material, deciding what matters, and turning that material into an instrument you can perform. In this video, we will walk through 10 techniques that make that process cleaner, faster, and more musical. We will choose samples with intention, make better cuts, stretch and pitch with purpose, layer without mud, process and resample, rebuild rhythm, verify key, add original production, and create a personal sample library. The goal is not to hide where a sound came from. The goal is to make deliberate musical decisions at every stage. Tip 1. Choose the sample's musical job before you start cutting. When a recording catches your ear, do not immediately slice every beat into 100 pieces. First, ask what you actually want from it. Is the chord movement going to carry the hook? Is there a drum break with a pocket your programmed drums do not have? Is one syllable useful as a texture? Maybe the valuable part is not a note at all, but room tone, tape noise, a breath, or the attack of an instrument. Listen through the source at least once without editing. Mark several moments, then name the role of each one in plain language. Harmonic bed, rhythmic accent, melodic answer, atmosphere, or transition. That label forces you to hear function instead of novelty. Capture a little more audio than you think you need. The sound before a phrase may contain a natural pickup, and the tail may contain the room that makes the sample feel alive. You can trim later. Once you choose the role, let it guide the rest of the production. A sample meant to be a soft atmosphere needs different chopping and processing than a sample meant to become a tight drum kit. Good sample choices are not always the most dramatic sounds. They are the sounds that leave a clear space for your own decisions. Tip 2. Make clean slice boundaries and use transients as landmarks rather than laws. A transient is the fast attack at the start of a sound, the first crack of a snare, the pick on a string, or the consonant at the front of a vocal. Those attacks are easy to see as sharp peaks in a waveform, so they are natural places to create slices. Starting a chop on the attack often makes the sound feel immediate when you trigger it from a pad. But clean chopping is not as simple as placing every marker on a spike. Zoom in and listen. If the waveform jumps from one level to another at the boundary, the sudden discontinuity can create a click. Move the boundary toward a zero crossing when that preserves the groove, or add a very short fade in and fade out. Many samplers also provide an attack and release envelope that can soften the edge without changing the slice itself. The endpoint matters too. A tight cut can make a phrase punchy, while leaving part of the decay can preserve swing and emotion. If you cut in the middle of a sustained note, that can still work. Use a crossfade, an envelope, or the next slice to disguise the seam. So start with transients, check zero crossings, shape the edges, and trust the result at full tempo. A waveform suggests where to cut. Your ears decide whether the cut is musical. Tip 3. Match the time stretch method to the material. Time stretching changes duration without necessarily changing pitch, but every algorithm has to make assumptions about the sound. A rhythmic or transient-focused mode tries to keep drum attacks sharp. A monophonic mode is designed around one main note at a time, such as a bass line or solo voice. A polyphonic or complex mode tries to preserve chords and layered material. Texture or granular modes may trade realism for a cloudy, fragmented character. The labels vary between DAWs, so learn what the modes are trying to protect rather than memorizing one product menu. Loop a difficult section and switch modes while level matched. Listen to the attacks, the stereo image, the tone of sustained notes, and the space between events. There is no universal percentage where stretching suddenly becomes bad. A small change can expose artifacts in a delicate piano, while an extreme stretch can sound perfect when you want a frozen atmosphere. The source, algorithm, settings, and artistic goal all matter. If the result loses impact, try a different mode, change the project tempo less, or slice the phrase and move the events instead of stretching the entire file. Sometimes the artifact is the most interesting part. The important decision is whether that texture supports the track or happened by accident. Tip 4. Use pitch to change emotion, register, and motion. Pitching a sample down often makes the attack slower and the tone feel heavier. Pitching up can make the same phrase feel quicker, brighter, or more urgent. Those descriptions are useful starting points, not guaranteed emotional rules. Harmony, tempo, arrangement, and timbre decide what the listener actually feels. After you create slices, try tuning them independently. Keep the first chord at its original pitch, move the next slice up, drop a vocal fragment an octave, and use a repeated note to create tension before the pattern resolves. Now you are not merely transposing a loop. You are performing a new phrase with the source's tone. Listen for side effects. Traditional pitch shifting may also change duration. Some algorithms preserve time but alter formants, which can make a voice sound smaller or larger than expected. Either result can be useful when it is intentional. Pitching before chopping is also valid. It may reveal new transients or move the whole source into a better register before you find the best moments. Pitching after chopping gives you more per-slice freedom. Try both and keep the version that creates the strongest musical response. The practical move is simple. Stop asking whether the sample is technically in its original form and start asking whether every slice is earning its pitch. Tip 5. Layer samples that contribute different information. Stacking 3 full-range loops usually creates volume and confusion, not depth. A useful layer has a job. One sample might provide the chord attack, another the sustained body, and a third a narrow texture in the background. If 2 layers occupy the same register and rhythm, decide which one leads and remove what the other does not need. Start with timing. Zoom in on the attacks, or intentionally offset them when you want a flam or a lazy feel. Then check polarity and phase. 2 similar low-frequency layers can become thinner when combined, even though each sounds strong alone. Flip polarity where appropriate, adjust timing, or choose less similar material. One reliable approach is to duplicate the same sample. Keep one copy relatively clean for definition. Filter, compress, saturate, or reduce the bandwidth of the duplicate for texture, then blend it quietly underneath. Because the performances match, you get a coherent sound with separate control over clarity and character. Key compatibility helps with harmonic layers, but compatible does not always mean identical. A tension note may be the personality of the chord. Solo the layers to diagnose problems, then judge them with the whole track playing. Depth comes from complementary roles. If muting a layer changes nothing important, remove it and give the remaining sounds more space. Tip 6. Treat effects as part of the sampling process, then resample the result. Filtering can isolate the region that carries the sample's identity. Reverb can turn a short hit into a wash. Delay can create a call and response phrase. Saturation or bit reduction can emphasize texture. Modulation can move a static chord, while reversal turns a decay into an entrance. Granular style processing can break the source into tiny grains and rebuild it as a pad, pulse, or cloud. Do not assume one fixed chain is best. EQ into a filter may remove unnecessary lows before distortion. Reverb before distortion creates a dense, smeared tail. Delay before filtering can make every repeat grow darker. Change the order and listen to what each stage contributes. Then print the result. Record or export the processed phrase and load that new file back into the sampler. This is resampling, turning an effect chain into fresh source material. Once it is audio again, you can reverse it, stretch it, chop it, and perform it without staring at a row of plugins. Resampling also encourages commitment. Save the clean source, name the processed version, and move forward. The goal is not to make the sample unrecognizable for its own sake, it is to discover a sound that feels authored inside this track. Tip 7. Recompose the rhythm instead of accepting the source's loop. Take a 4-bar phrase and begin with 16 slices. That grid is only a starting map. Trigger the first few chops in order so you understand the original motion. Then leave a gap. Repeat one short slice, move an accent ahead of the beat, reverse the final fragment, shorten one slice until it acts like percussion, and let another ring across the bar line. Silence is one of the most powerful chopping tools. A gap gives the new drums space and makes the next sample hit feel intentional. Repetition creates a motif. A displaced slice creates syncopation. Different note lengths change the groove even when the start points stay the same. Try playing the pads instead of drawing every note. Record several passes while the beat loops. Your hands will discover combinations you would not design with a mouse. Then edit the best performance. Tighten only the hits that weaken the pocket and keep the human variations that make the phrase breathe. You can also change the choke behavior. Let slices overlap for a washed collage, or put them in one choke group so each new hit cuts off the previous one. Those two settings can turn the same pattern into completely different music. The source gives you sound. Your gaps, repeats, accents, and performance create the composition. Tip 8. Find the pitch center, then verify it in the track. Key detection tools are useful because they give you a fast hypothesis. They are not an authority. A sample may contain borrowed chords, a bass note outside the scale, analog tuning drift, or no stable key at all. Different tools can analyze the same phrase and return different answers. Start with the detected key, then play a simple bass note underneath. Does the sample settle, or does one chord fight it? Try the nearby alternatives. Slow the sample down if the bass movement is hard to hear. A piano or sine tone can help you compare pitches without adding more character. Once the likely center is clear, decide whether to conform or create tension. You may transpose the whole sample, tune only one slice, or write a bass line that follows the changing routes. Sometimes the unusual note is exactly what makes the source memorable, and forcing it into a single scale removes the color you wanted. Check the decision with drums, bass, and the main melodic element playing. A key label is metadata. Musical compatibility is something you hear in context. Tip 9. Build original production around the sample so it becomes a complete record. A compelling flip can still feel unfinished when the sample is carrying every responsibility. Add drums that respond to its accents. Write a bass line that supports the harmonic movement without simply tracing every root. Create a counter melody that appears only where the sample leaves space. Use transitions, fills, and automation to turn a loop into sections. Start with contrast. If the sample is dense and dusty, a simple, clean drum sound may give it definition. If the sample is bright and thin, a warmer bass or lower percussion layer can provide weight. Do not add parts because a template says they belong. Add the part that solves the musical problem you can hear. Arrangement is another form of chopping. In the verse, use fewer slices and leave room for a vocal. In the hook, restore the full pattern or add a higher layer. Drop the sample for half a bar before a section change. Filter it in the intro and reveal the full bandwidth when the drums arrive. The strongest production does not bury the source, and it does not worship it. It creates a conversation between recorded material and new performance. Tip 10. Create a sample library from sounds you record yourself. Record a chord on an instrument, a friend clapping in a room, a door latch, a glass tap, a spoken phrase, or the hum of a machine. Record 20 seconds of room tone after a session. Bounce a melody through effects, play it from a speaker, and record the room again. Ordinary sounds become valuable when you collect them with intention. Organize the library while the details are fresh. Include the date, source, approximate key or pitch, tempo when relevant, microphone or device, and any rights or permission notes. Mark whether a file is your own recording, licensed material, or something that requires further clearance before release. Good metadata protects creative momentum later. Make small themed sessions, 10 metallic hits, 5 vocal textures, a set of one-note instrument recordings, or several versions of one chord at different dynamics. The limitation gives the library a recognizable character. Your personal recordings do more than reduce browsing time. They build a sonic fingerprint. After you stretch, pitch, layer, process, and chop those sounds across several tracks, the collection starts to reflect your rooms, your instruments, and your decisions. Here is the repeatable sample flip. Choose a source for a specific musical job. Mark transients, then refine the boundaries with zero crossings, fades, and envelopes. Stretch with a mode suited to the material. Pitch for register and emotion. Layer complementary rolls, not duplicate clutter. Process the sound, print it, and sample the result again. Recompose the rhythm with gaps, repeats, accents, and performance. Use key detection as a clue, verify it with your ears, and build new drums, bass, melody, transitions, and arrangement around the sample. Then keep recording material for a library that belongs to your own creative world. One important distinction: audio transformation is a production technique, not automatic copyright clearance. Pitching, chopping, reversing, or making a sample hard to recognize does not by itself guarantee that a release is legally safe. Rights can involve the sound recording, the underlying composition, licenses, permissions, exceptions, and the law of the relevant jurisdiction. For work you intend to release, use sounds you created, material licensed for the intended use, public domain material where applicable, or obtain the permissions and qualified advice your situation requires. Creatively, the standard is simpler. Listen closely, make a decision, perform the result. Sampling becomes powerful when the source stops behaving like a loop and starts responding like an instrument.